Hi everybody, this is Miss Boyle, and in this video I'm going to be showing you guys an example for the digital story assignment that you guys will be completing. And since this lesson is all about the Vietnam War, you guys will be choosing a topic ranging from key people, key places, key battles, things of that nature. But just for the purposes of this assignment, I'm going to be showing you guys an example on Vietnamization. So Vietnamization was a strategy introduced by President Richard Nixon in 1969, and this was 4 years after the United States had first gotten involved in Vietnam in 1965. So what it was is a plan that Nixon came up with where American forces in the war in Vietnam would be transferring all military responsibilities to South Vietnam. This would allow the American troops to gradually come back to the United States. And President Nixon really realized that the war was very unpopular among the American people, so this was one of the ways he came up with to kind of reverse those negative effects. And he was quoted as saying, "The defense of freedom is everybody's business, not just America's business. And it is particularly the responsibility of the people whose freedom is threatened." And he goes on to say, "In the previous administration, we Americanized the war in Vietnam. And in this administration, we are Vietnamizing the search for peace." So in addition to a withdrawal of the United States forces, Nixon had pledged an increase in the training and equipping of the South Vietnamese military, as well as in adherence to all treaty commitments. And he did this because he wanted the South Vietnamese military to be less reliant on American forces, because they wanted to start phasing out American presence in South Vietnam. And he was quoted as saying, "This withdrawal will be made from strength and not from weakness, and as South Vietnamese forces become stronger, the rate of American withdrawal can become greater." So Nixon gradually reduced the number of United States troops in Vietnam. He did this in several stages. At the peak of American involvement in 1969, there were 549,000 troops, and 3 years later in 1972, there were only 69,000. So about a year later, in January 1973, the Nixon administration negotiated a peace agreement with North Vietnam. And the terms of the settlement were that the United States agreed to withdraw all remaining troops within 60 days in exchange for an immediate ceasefire, and also that all of the American prisoners of war would be returned to the United States. On the North Vietnamese side, they promised to recognize the legitimacy of South Vietnam's government and submit future disputes to an international commission. So eventually, South Vietnam did lose the war, and on April 30th, 1975, the North Vietnamese Communist forces captured Saigon and eventually reunified North and South under a communist regime. So, while Vietnamization was good in theory, it did have many flaws, and eventually it was unsuccessful in preventing South Vietnam from falling to the communist regime.